Hi, I'm Charlie Collins and we're talking sport. And you're very welcome to Talking Sport. A busy weekend in sport gone by, a very busy one coming up, and joining me in studio to look back and to look forward, Rory Kennedy, 3-time winner of the Donegal International Rally, and he will be competing this year with Gary Jennings. John Joe Doherty, former Donegal star, All-Ireland winner and Donegal senior team manager, and sports reporter with the Donegal News, Chris McNulty. You're all welcome, guys. We're celebrating our anniversary 1 year on. This is the anniversary, will be next week, of our first podcast, and Rory and Chris were with me on that occasion, so you're all very welcome. We're going to start with the GAA situation. Provincial semi-finals coming up this weekend, first round of the qualifiers, but briefly let's look back. Yesterday, John Joe, Tyrone out of the Ulster Championship at the quarter-final stage, not for the first time in recent times, one would have to say, and certainly an air from what I've seen on social media and talking to people that this Tyrone team are just not up to it. It's a time for change, and when it comes to the big challenges, Tyrone are failing.
Well, Tyrone are probably a team, Charlie, that are in transition this last number of years. It's probably taken longer for the Tyrone supporters than they would like, but the reality is it's very difficult to replace a team that won 3 All-Irelands overnight. Players coming into the team feel probably under pressure, and they probably feel they have a lot to live up with, and that can be hard to carry, and that's probably a situation they have in Tyrone at the minute. When you think the pundits would have been saying that there's a massive underage structure in Tyrone and they've got a ready-made team coming on, but the reality is senior football is a lot different to underage football, and they're going through that process at the minute. I think Mickey Hart deserves a lot of credit because he has tried to keep some of the older players there involved to again bring in the young lads. When it works, it's great, but when it doesn't work, you'll be accused of holding on too long. So it's just a blend that they're finding it hard to mix at the minute. But Tyrone won't be down for too long. That's one thing for sure. And I don't think you're talking about Tyrone being good enough to win All-Irelands at this stage. But no team will still want to meet them in the qualifiers. Yeah,
one or two Tyrone fans would say to you, he needs to clean the board altogether, get rid of the older guys, and he still seems to be very much dependent. I mean, Sean Kavanagh, Stephen O'Neill, Conor Gormley, Joe McMahon, there's a number of them that have been around there for a long time, and are they able to do it at that level anymore, or really is the need to be at that level there with them, John Joe?
Yeah, that's the question, because what Mickey or any manager in his position would be looking for would be younger lads to take the lead and to try to develop new leaders within his squad. But the problem you have there is that as long as these fellas are about, it's hard for those potential leaders to come to the fore, and I think that's a problem Mickey has. Maybe at this stage it probably would be the way forward to clear the board. I would imagine the board will probably clear itself over the next short while anyway, and then they have to bite the bullet. But I would be very much I would be very sympathetic towards older players. I think you do need a blend of youth and experience in the team, and unfortunately it's always the older player that takes the rap on days like this.
Yeah, Chris, I mean, Tyrone not contesting Ulster finals is kind of unimaginable for people in Tyrone, given the passion that they have, and that's just not happening for them at the moment.
No, it's not, but I suppose the writing has been on the wall. Like the recent Ulster campaigns, I think they've only won since 2010 three games in the Ulster Championship, which tells its own story in about 4 years now. So that's since Donegal beat them in Jim's first year in 2011. They were going for the 3 in a row that year, and there was a lot of people across the province that almost thought that Tyrone were invincible in many ways, and they had this aura about them. And okay, they were beaten yesterday, and margins are so fine in football at the minute, particularly in Ulster. Like, you look yesterday at Meath giving Carlow an absolute pace, and you don't see that in Ulster football. And any day you go out, you'll have a battle, and those wee fine margins. You look at that last minute free that Niall Morgan kicked. I'm sure Mickey will reflect today, should he have just told Sean Kavanagh to go and kick that thing over the bar. Probably felt he kicked a harder one against Down and that game up in Newry. But the thing about Tyrone, they're going to play Louth in the qualifiers. A lot of us probably expect them to get over that, and no matter who is paired with Tyrone, nobody's actually going to want to play them. And you'd still fancy Tyrone to reach Croke Park, and once they get in there, maybe into the August weekend, they're those couple of games, you just don't know with them. But Mickey does probably have that rebuilding job, and he's in the process of it at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, Rory, the qualifiers is a bit of a quagmire, and if we look at the fixtures, you would nearly say, right, Derry will beat Longford, Laois will beat Fermanagh, Limerick will beat London, and Wicklow will probably beat Offaly this week, and then the following week Tyrone will beat Louth, Down will beat Leitrim, Cavan will beat Westmeath, and Waterford will beat Carlow. That's the way you expect them to go, because there seems to be an imbalance. The stronger teams seem to have got good draws and that sort of thing, but it's really not a place you want to be. You don't want to be starting in the qualifiers in June, because it's a long trip at the end of August.
It's definitely a long trip, but as Chris said there, make no mistake about it. Like, Tyrone are going to appear further down the line here again, and they're going to be a very formidable force at that stage to overcome again. But on the other hand, just as Chris said as well, when you look at the first round when they played down in Noma, I think that day.
Yeah.
And that last kick of the ball from Sean Kavanagh to score that to level the match and bring it to a replay. Of course, they've done the job in the replay. Now, pretty much the exact same situation again against or at the weekend there again. And this time when Niall Morgan went up, they just missed out on that. But it's very much the same situation again. But I think Tyrone have a long way to go to get back to where they were.
Yeah, because they could have been out in Noma. I mean, if Donal O'Hare had kicked that free that would have put down 3 points up, the game was over, and he missed it, and Tyrone, to their credit, came back. But it looks, each game that Tyrone are playing, they're just getting through by the skin of their teeth, or just losing by the skin of their teeth.
Yeah, it's a bit like what John Joe says. You need a blend of youth and the older players, experienced players, and it seems Sean Kavanagh and these boys have come up to the forefront and have been counted when they were needed. That's you need them players on the big day. But as Tyrone are at that crossroads whereby the blend mightn't just be right, and they've a bit to go yet.
Yeah, we'll stay with you, Rory. I was talking to you in Celtic Park, and Chris talked about small margins. I mean, Donegal were 2 points down at half time, and it was a game you were looking at and you were wondering and you were hoping, sort of thing. And I suppose the first 10 minutes, the second half, they blew Derry away. So that game was won in a small kind of a 10 or 12 minutes or whatever. Donegal are going to play Antrim now in Clonus on Sunday, and of course we're all thinking, well, handy one into the final, 4 finals in a row.
A bit like the qualifiers there, it's a bit the predictability would be that they would get through this. But of course, then they have to go and face Monaghan, and if they overcome this next weekend, and of course Monaghan's proved a bit of an Achilles heel for Donegal a few times. So that's
the Monaghan beat Armagh, of course.
Well, of course, of course. But anyway, there's a lot. There's it's a very exciting a few games ahead. And everybody's going to be at the edge of the seat to see what's going to happen.
Do you think Donegal are back somewhere close to where they were based on what we've seen? I mean, it's only one game, but it was a tough one, because Derry were coming off the back of a great National League campaign, got to the final against Dublin, although they were hammered there. But going into Celtic Park wasn't easy, particularly with the injury situation.
Exactly, but that 10 or 15 minutes in the second half in Celtic Park was unbelievable. When they turned it on, they really made it happen and got the scores, and then they defended very well towards the end. So they look very good, and you'd have to think that if they can play like that again, and they have every chance.
Yeah. John Joe, I hate to remind you, but you have bad memories, Antrim in the Championship, and I mean, we're all guilty of it, saying it's a handy one. Once Donegal got over Derry, you're in the final then. Didn't matter who come through against Antrim or Fermanagh. Great place for Liam and Paddy Bradley and the people that are working behind the scenes in Antrim to bring the team to Clonus with.
Oh, without a doubt, Antrim were exactly where they want to be. Going back to 2009, I remember talking to Baker after that game, and he said that he felt Donegal were vulnerable at the time, and rightly so, because we had a few men coming back from injuries, and I remember, if I'm not mistaken, Carl Lacey was only back in the country in a month.
Yeah.
So Antrim are exactly where they want to be, and even going back way back to my own playing time, Antrim were never more than a kick or two behind Donegal when the final whistle would go, and that's the way it's going to be. All these championship matches, especially the games in Ulster, they have a way of balancing themselves out, and unless you get off to a very, very good start, which Donegal are capable of doing, and blowing a team away, but if that doesn't materialise, these games do go down to the wire, and it's an underdog's game at that stage. It becomes a dog fight, and the crowd gets behind the underdog. So I mean, just reading just some of the comments Jim has made, I mean, he's definitely not taking anything for granted, and he's going to be preparing for this game like like all others, you know.
Sure. It's a good point, Chris, isn't it? John Joe makes it. The longer you leave an underdog in the game, the greater chance there is that the underdog's going to beat you. And Antrim have nothing to lose here, because the expectation is, I mean, Rory mentioned it, even yesterday, Peter Canavan said Donegal Monaghan for the final before these two semi-finals are played.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Antrim, I suppose they are going in with nothing to lose. Like they had a very, very poor league campaign, and you look, it was only London and Carlow, I think, were below them in Division 4, and at that you would say Donegal are back in Division 1, and you know they should blow them out of the water almost. But as John Joe says, like I was glancing through the history books this morning, and in the last 20 or 30 years, Donegal have never had a huge victory over Antrim. Like, going back, the boys played them in 94, and it was pretty close up to the last few minutes. We had the experience of 09, and even that game in 2011, Jim's first championship game, it took a late, I think, an injury time goal by Mark McHugh before we could actually say that we were through that game. So, you know, Baker's going to be coming on Sunday on the back of what should have been a convincing win over Fermanagh. They let Fermanagh back into the game, and they were really, really clinging by their fingertips at the end of the game. Now, the one big thing for Donegal is they're going in with a full deck this week, and you know, John Joe earlier had talked about, you know, Mickey and the Tyrone boys, and you know, in 2029 Carl was only back in the country 2 weeks. Donegal lost the game, and people were saying, you know, geez, should he have played Carl Lacey? But on the flip side of that coin, if he'd left Carl Lacey on the bench and Donegal had lost the game, you know, that's that thing about the fine margins again, you know, and where managers sort of they live or die by that, you know. But you know, in terms of Sunday, look, Donegal have a full strength panel, and it's huge when you look that they beat Derry relatively convincingly without Neil Gallagher, Rory Kennedy and Martin McElhinney. You would say the top 3 midfielders in the county, none of them starting that game. Jim just pulled the rabbit from the hat and starting Paddy McGrath, who played no county football since last August, and young Jigger O'Connor, who was preparing for his Leaving Cert exams. It was, you know, it took us all by surprise, I think, you know. But
the big question now, Rory, is who's he going to start on Sunday? Because obviously the guys that he started did well, and the guys that he took off the bench, and I suppose it's a great situation for Jim McGuinness to be in.
Yeah. Well, you only have to look at Christy Toy's performance against Derry, and that first half was unbelievable performance. Like, and you know, set the thing up really, and then the second half when Martin McElhinney come on, you know, his contribution as well was immeasurable. Like.
What do you think, John Joe? Will he start with the strongest possible team, or Jim likes to bring people off the bench, impact subs and all that sort of stuff? And I mean, he'll be looking at this game obviously somewhat differently. The supporters are. He'll know the dangers.
Yeah. I just, you wouldn't know, to be honest, you know, because I think he had a plan going into the Derry match, and he executed that plan. I think any other manager may have changed his plan halfway through when he seen possibly how well Christy Toy was going in the first half against Derry, but he obviously had planned it again to change the 2 midfielders in the second half to finish out the match. So what Jim does, well, I would imagine Rory Kennedy will come back into the team anyway, you know, because he's just such an influential player within the squad. But there's no reason for me to assume that, because, as I said, Jim will sit down and prepare this game, prepare for this. The one thing that Donegal have, that Monaghan have, that maybe not many other teams in Ulster have at the minute. Armagh lost it a couple of years. They have that physicality about them that Tyrone don't have, you know. And I think it's the one problem where Antrim would possibly find Donegal hard to compete with. It's just the sheer strength of the players, you know. And I think Jim will probably pick his team around that notion that he probably feels that he has an advantage on them, because they've got 3 or 4 years of kind of strength and conditioning done that maybe Antrim may not have done, you know. So I would imagine we'll be very keen to go down a physical route, which our team our style of play is based around anyway, you know, from the McGee's breaking out in the midfield to Michael Murphy. Where Michael Murphy plays, it's very much part of the Donegal psychic at the minute of how we play football. So I think there are advantages to be gained on that against Antrim. But you know, going back to your original question, Charlie, it's a nice place for a manager to be, having choices on selection, but at the same time it can when you don't have a choice it can actually work in your favour as well.
Absolutely.
You know what Donegal have shown in the last few weeks as well, Charlie. You know, there was maybe a worry from us all that there was no strength and depth in Donegal. Now we probably all the time compare ourselves to Dublin when people talk about strength and depth. Like, Dublin have an A team and a B team that could probably compete in the championship as well, but leaving aside Dublin, the rest of the teams, Donegal aren't that badly fixed off when you look at options. Again, when you can leave aside Rory Kennedy, Neil Gallagher and Martin McElhinney, go to Celtic Park and record a pretty decent victory over Derry. Let's be fair, on a day when Colin McFadden didn't score. And how many times gone through his 150 odd games does Colin McFadden not put a score on the board? That says a lot about Donegal. The thing about them is that forward line of Donegal's does have the capability to absolutely explode against Antrim, and if they do that, then going back to that original point, Donegal do have the capability within their ranks to blow Antrim out of the water. Now, would they want to do that? I don't know. Maybe, Jim's going to go in here and, as John Joe said, go at it and try and get the game won early on and maybe try out a few things. The worry I have for Donegal, going back to that Derry game, and Rory mentioned Christy Toy. I remember watching the game back. Christy had 15 possessions in the first half, did everything perfectly, didn't give the ball away, took one score I think, set up a couple of scores, and he was hooked at half time. The problem I think for Donegal, they were in control that day and they were where they want to be, is what do Donegal do when those plans are maybe tossed in the air by opposition and they have to think on their feet and alter things during games? That's when it does become a problem.
That's it. That's the manager comes into play.
That's where your squad comes into play then.
Yeah, for sure. Lots of provincial semi-finals on. Galway and Sligo are playing to play Mayo. Dublin play Wexford and Kildare play Meath. That's in a couple of weeks' time. And the two Munsters on, Cork against Tipperary, Kerry against Clare. When I was making this out this morning, John Joe, I thought these other ones are so clear cut compared to the Ulster one, because you expect Dublin and Kildare to come through. Maybe Meath will shock Kildare, you wouldn't know. Cork and Kerry will come through to the last 12. Galway, Sligo, it's close to home. Who would you fancy there?
You always imagine, Galway will beat Sligo for some reason, and it's probably a traditional thing more than anything else. Galway are a team that are struggling they're struggling with their past as well. I mean, like they're coming out. You have a generation of footballers there now that are just after a team that has won 2 All-Ireland. So they're struggling to find their place on the pecking order as well. I mean, they've won All-Ireland under 21s, but they don't seem to be able to make the breakthrough. And maybe the fact that Mayo were so strong in Connacht at the minute is not giving any of the other teams a chance to get a foothold at getting to Croke Park on a regular basis. So I would be expecting, Galway may start. If the Mayo team would happen to go into decline over the next number of years, you'd imagine that Galway will be the natural team to replace them. Yeah,
we'll just go back to Clonus, because Donegal Miners are out as well. Rory, and impressed greatly in the first half. I mean, it was almost a flip of the Miners and the seniors in Celtic Park. The Miners were so good in the first half and struggled a lot in the second half. But Declan Bonner seems to have a good squad there.
Good squad there, surely, Charlie. And as you say, struggled in the second half, when we're hanging on a wee bit towards the end. But all in all, their first half performance was strong enough to carry them through. And I'm sure a lot of lessons learned from that performance as well. He made a couple of changes, and I think it'll stand them when they go to the next stage.
Yeah, seemed to have a good squad. And the ladies are out this weekend as well, Chris, against Armagh. The semi-finals was a big weekend for the county.
Huge weekend. And just on the ladies thing, I can never figure out the GA on a day when the Donegal Miners and senior men's teams are playing. They put them on at 5 o'clock and listen to ski, and I know you can argue it's on the way home, but look, people from a lot of places in Donegal are travelling from very early in the morning, and to me it almost puts the ladies a few notches on the ladder.
It's definitely on Sunday, is it? I thought it might have been on Saturday.
No, they're talking now 5 o'clock Sunday and listen to ski, and it's a bit of an insult to them, to be honest.
Well, just on that point, because I'm involved with I'm chairman of my own club up in Glengullam, and the ladies board and the men's board, although they're all part of the GA umbrella, they do seem to be going their own way. I mean, there's a different affiliation fee, there's a different price to be paid for insurance, etc. And what about
equality?
And these present days of equality, I'm surprised it's going on, but the ladies would tend to paddle their own canoe as far as I can see, and maybe that's just the lack of cohesion in the fixtures may be just a kind of an offshoot of that problem.
Yeah. And the hurlers got beat at the weekend against Dowd. I suppose hardly unexpected that.
No surprise, I suppose, given that they were without probably the two best hurlers in the county. Lee Henderson, who had top scored throughout the National League, has gone to America for the summer, and Danny Cullen probably, certainly in my brief time in Donegal journalism, easily the best hurler I've seen, and he's gone on the latest GA player to do a cruciate, so he's going to be out for the best part of next year. Huge blow.
Alright, we're going to move on to soccer and stay with you, Chris. Harps beaten again on Friday night. Just looking at some of the stats, I mean, it's obvious, well, it looks obvious anyway what the problem is. They're not scoring enough goals. 16 goals in 14 league matches, because they've only conceded 13. Although looking at the League of Ireland First Division, it's funny, there's not too many teams scoring goals, and there's not many conceded. But just looking at the two teams ahead of them who have 5 points more than them, Waterford have only scored a goal more than them and conceded a goal less, and Wexford have conceded the same, 3 goals more and scored the same. So we talked about small margins earlier on. Harps are third from bottom, but it looks there that a wee goal here or there could have made a huge difference. But is that sort of hiding a bigger problem?
It probably is. Like Ollie, I think, summed it up perfectly on Friday night when he said we find it hard to beat teams, but we're hard to beat ourselves, and that has been this half of the season. Just in a nutshell, the problem for them has been creating chances. Like on Friday night, they didn't score, but they didn't have one shot against Longford Town at home. Like that, it's a serious problem.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're not creating chances, they're forcing a few set pieces, a few frees, a few corners, but they're making no inroads in terms of open play. Now, what Ollie has done, to his credit, is he's made them very, very hard to beat. They're very solid at the back, and conceding, I suppose, a lot of goals that would have Ollie pulling his hair out, because they're coming from those set plays that he would be sort of so focused on in training and so prepared for. Like even on Friday night there, I mean, just lost that wee bit of discipline, conceded a free kick 20 or 25 yards out, and the guy sticks it in the top shelf with 5 minutes to go. It's must be so frustrating.
Have you been up, Rory? You go up to Harps,
I go to Harps quite often now.
Yeah.
The worst thing here, the most disappointing thing about going to Harps is, just like Chris said there, the lack of shots on goal, and you go there and a lot of Donegal people want to get behind Harps and support them and see them through, but sometimes you just get let down by the quality of football at times, where you expect a wee bit more and it just doesn't happen, and like there's a lot of people very much behind Harps, but sometimes you're left scratching your head.
Would it be better losing 4-3 than 1-0 and people coming away?
I think so, anyway, and a bit of entertainment, a bit of, going forward a wee bit more, and like football is really about entertainment and scoring goals, like, and it's I don't know the philosophy or what the philosophy that Ollie has, but I'm an avid supporter of Harps and go to as many matches as I can, but I do often come away very disappointed and wondering, where do we go from here? Like?
Yeah, and the big problem here, where they're sitting, Chris, is this is halfway in the season now, isn't it? 14. There's 14 more games. I mean, if Harps are going to be down there, and I know that sometimes they're not pleased about you mentioning, any of us mentioning how few people are going, but the reality is, and Rory is supposed to back this up, as an avid supporter, if you get performances and results like that, people are going to stop going.
That's the point. But Rory also touched on something very good there. There are people out there who want to support Finn Harps, and they're just crying out for them to get those couple of results. Like that night a few weeks ago against Shelbourne, they were one down to 10 men, but the fight and the character they showed that night to come back and get a draw, people left. Finn Park felt as happy that night as it has done in maybe 5 or 6 years, and there was a real sense that here was a team, they're playing for the jersey, and it contributed. Then there was a crowd of 350 on Friday night, which, given that it was against Spain and Holland in the World Cup, was quite decent given their recent figures. But they were very, very defensive. Like they're playing a formation, I feel, that doesn't suit the players that he has. It would suit different players, but for example, Kieran Call, a natural left back, is being played as a left winger, and he's just out of his natural habitat. On the right flank, they're getting no real width at all. And you find then the strikers, Kevin McHugh was basically playing like a central midfielder on Friday night. And Kevin, in his pomp, couldn't have played at central midfield. He's an out-and-out, in-the-box striker. That's where he has to be played. And I feel in the second half of the season, Harps, over the transfer window, Ollie's probably going to have to go out, if he can manage to magic a few quid from somewhere, get a ball playing central midfielder.
Constant struggle for
a few quid, John Joe.
Yeah, well, just Rory posed the question there about the philosophy of the Harps, and I would imagine, unfortunately for Harps, your philosophy is very much based around the depth of your pocket,
Yeah.
And when you're so far away from the big centres of population, it's probably hard to. Roy Keane said a long time ago that he found it hard to attract top players to out of London. So I don't think the top players.
And like any sport, I suppose, John Joe, GAA or any sport in soccer, team sports, people won't go to watch something that they think, as Rory said, they're not going to be entertained, or they don't want to go and watch a team losing.
You know what? You're exactly right, Charlie, because the whole blanket defence, even though it is, our eyes are getting trained towards it, and the games, I think, in my opinion, are getting more entertaining. But people go to watch their team win, and that's a starting off point. And if Harps or any other team could get a few victories under their belt, regardless how it was achieved, I think it would be the launching pad for. For maybe better times. I don't know if there's a blanket defence that you can play in soccer, but if there is, that would definitely be applied.
But last year, Chris, remember when Derry and Harps were in that cup game? One Friday night, they're back in, I think it was mid-July last year. Yeah. Brilliant entertainment,
cracking game,
full house, powerful bit of entertainment. Went to extra time and even went to penalties.
Harps were unlucky to lose.
They were unlucky to lose, desperately unlucky. But it was a great night, and it was a great night for the supporters and everything else. Even though they didn't get through, they played for the shirt and put a huge effort in.
Those two big cup nights they had last year, Derry and Drogheda, were probably a reminder of what Harps can do. But
bygone days.
Looking at the future of this season, they're out of the League Cup, and they're through to the next round of the FAI Cup. They're dependent on the draw then, but a look at the league table, there's a very, very real chance Harps could find themselves drift apart here. They're already 9 points off the playoffs, and you wonder, it's that old chicken and egg thing. Do they take the punt now and go out and try and sign the players who are going to get them up? If that fails, then all of a sudden the depth of the pocket gets shorter and shorter by the week, because look, people have said before that Harps need a young local all Donegal team. They've tried that, it hasn't worked. To me, it doesn't matter where the players are from, doesn't matter what's on the envelope of their address. If they're playing there and they're winning matches, people will come.
We just briefly mentioned the World Cup and England losing to Italy, of course, big news, and Holland beating Spain, big news, and Argentina won Brazil, France, all the big teams seem to have won. One or two kind of shock results. I saw something on Facebook last week which I found very amusing. The England team arriving, and there was a caption of them. You could see them coming down off the plane, and there was a caption saying, "Keep it running, we won't be long." Some smart arse or whatever.
It's a bit like the physio who broke his ankle there. So disappointed coming home, and his family were on saying desperately sorry he's going to have to come home from the World Cup, and they were all commiserating, saying don't worry about it, the rest of them will be over.
Well, listen, I mean, the reality is if they lose to Uruguay on Thursday, they're going to be. Have you been watching it, John?
I have, I watched the late night games. I seen England the last night.
They were a bit unlucky to lose, in fairness.
In fairness, I would give them credit. I mean, they didn't have that many big names compared to other World Cups. They went without a massive reputation, but without a doubt they give a battling display against the Italians and the French and all these teams. When they go to the world competitions, they are hard to beat.
Italy
they
particularly.
Well, they could have got a draw, but it wasn't to be. And I think somebody said that they're planning for the next tournament. Whatever that'll be. But the problem is
Italy made it look a wee bit easy, didn't it? They sort of weren't even on top gear at
times.
No,
it's amazing. Well, Italy are not a good side, I would say, Rory.
I thought the English showed a bit of more energy than I've seen from English teams in the past.
But what I mean is, it seems that even though Italy won, they won it sort of. They didn't kill themselves at a canter. And if you look at Pirlo down there and around the field,
if England had Pirlo, England probably would have won the game. But I mean, the reality, Chris, is they could be finished now on Friday morning. They could be out to the World Cup, and Sky will have to close down. I'm not sure what the BBC will do if that happens. It'll be a disaster.
I think Sky Sports are launching a new
the GA starting.
It's probably going to
be showing more Gaelic. They'll be showing more Gaelic, but I mean, it will be. I suppose. Listen, when your own country's not involved, you're not as interested. That's the way I feel about it anyway. So England are the next best thing, whether people like it or not, because everybody supports English clubs. But if England go out of it, it'll be a disaster for everybody.
But going back to that earlier discussion we had about Mickey Hart and about managers in the GA, Roy Hodgson to me has to be commended for the way he approached the game on Saturday night. He took a gamble on a few things and it could have worked off, it didn't. But even there this morning now, you see the English media, they're they've totally flipped. Where on Saturday they were saying, fair play to Roy, he's going to go for it. Now they're almost questioning, if he loses on Thursday night.
Media.
It's not like the media to change the story.
To get on the manager's back, John Joe. That'll be a very unusual thing to happen. Anyway, three of the heavyweights are in action now in the next day or two. Germany against Portugal tonight, Monday, and Belgium. Many people's dark horses, Belgium against Algeria. But anyway, that's we'll leave it there because.
But just before you finish on that, Charlie, the World Cup's been very entertaining.
It has, Rory. You're making the point earlier. A lot of goals scored.
Fantastic goals at that.
Yeah.
Like that goal that Van Persie scored the other night. I don't know where you would ever go to see a goal as good as that. Even the cross that was played in.
Right. 37 goals in 11 matches so far.
It's great entertainment.
Very, very good.
Say,
Absolutely. Right, talking about entertainment, Rory, Donegal International Rally. I was just looking at the records here. You're a 3-time winner, but it was 19 years since you won the last one. Is that right?
95.
95. Now you're going with Gary Jennings this weekend. And I mean, I'm just looking at Friday here. You've got Brina, you've got Carrick Mountain, you've got a Letter League. Classics.
The usual traditional.
Saturday, Kerry, Gort, Knockalla, Grove Hall, which is a bit new to me, and Garton. Grove Hall.
Yeah, Grove Hall is the stage around Cars the Diamond and Ballymore, all in that territory, Cairn Hill.
That hasn't been run for a couple of years.
No, they have used it in different formations, but this year they've got a completely new formation for that. So, and the one around Garton Lake was a new stage 2 years ago, which has proved very successful.
Again, yeah. And then on Sunday, Tough, Glen, Atlantic Drive, and Fanet Head. I mean, that's a tight finish.
3 of the toughest stages in the rally, and they come on Sunday. And last year the rally was pretty much sorted before it got there, and the stages didn't count as much, in terms of the overall outcome of the rally. But nevertheless, still 3 very tough stages on Sunday.
Just looking at the entry list, Sam Moffat and James O'Reilly back to defend it. I mean, there are people, and I said this to Sam at the launch as well. There's people who would look at it and say he kind of won it by default last year, given what happened with Gary Jennings and that. The Boyles, Declan and Brian. Again, we talked to Declan at the launch, and basically he said himself, when they stay in rallies, they tend to win rallies. Yourself and Gary are number 3. Donna Kelly, who's been doing very, very well, is there as well. Derek McGarrity, Seamus Leonard, and then we have the escorts and that. So it has the potential to be a great event. Rory, are you really up for it?
Oh, we're definitely up for it. Both Gary and myself have spent the past 2 days on the recce there, Saturday and Sunday there. And we put a lot of effort into the preparation for the rally, obviously, because work in, work out and so on. But like you mentioned, Sam Moffat, Sam won the rally last year, and it's unfair to say he won it by default. Not really. He was still very fast, and he won the rally. Nevertheless, it's about losing the least amount of time to win the rally, and Sam lost the least amount of time and won it. And fair play to him. And incidentally, he's gone on to won quite a few rallies later that year, and also some this year as well. So don't discount him. He'll be a very, very strong contender as well. But definitely the boys from Lettermack Award are the boys to watch. They were pretty much unbeatable this year. We were in front of them on the Circuit Ireland until the very last stage, and we had a wee crash there, and they went on to win, and we didn't finish at all. So, Declan's very strong and very good car and a very good team, and I would expect him.
Well, some people suggested to me if your two crews, you and Gary Jennings and the boys, stay on the road, that the rallies between those two?
Well, I would have to say that if you go by all year so far, and even in the past, we're pretty much neck and neck. We have been in Galway, Declan won. We were only half a second behind him when he went on to win, and in the circuit we were leading by 30 odd before we crashed. But anyway, that was us. We made the mistake. He didn't. He had the mental strength to see the job through, and fair play to him. Good luck to him. But there's another dark horse there in Darren Gass. Darren Gass was very strong in this rally last year as well. He was running second behind Gary for a lot of the rally.
Long time, that's
and
right.
Very close, and he had a wee bit of I think he went wide on the Grove Hall stage and got a puncture or something. But anyway, he didn't finish the rally, but nevertheless, very strong and not to be discounted either.
Chris, you've been following it with us for a good few years now and well into it as well. I mean, it's a tremendous event for the county, the rally, and once it gets going, the excitement around it is, if you're out and about with it, it's just fantastic.
It's cracking. It's a great boost for the county. Even people who aren't involved in the rally, but business people around these stages and around the towns. Letterkenny and Rally Weekend, it's always buzzing, and it's become a bit of a cliche in rallying, but Donegal is still the rally everybody talks about. No matter what rally you go to in the country, people are talking about Donegal. They want to do Donegal. I think it's probably the thing with the 3-day event, Rory, where it's the uniqueness of it, and you talk about fine margins in these other sports. Well, by God, these boys know all about fine margins, and you talk there about Declan Boyle and himself and Brian. Rallies they stay in, they tend to do well. The problem in Donegal, as many competitors over the years have found out, is actually getting to Sunday morning, and getting to Sunday morning in a position where you can actually
compete.
Make it
See
go
the
for
job
it.
through
Yeah,
then.
yeah. Well, just talking to Manus Kelly, I mean, at the launch as well, the margins with the Mark IIs
Yes.
was just incredible last year, and
0.8 of a second going into the last
that's
stage.
right,
And,
yeah.
and those sort of margins, you seldom get that. But in Donegal, because competition's that close, and the drivers it's a credit to the drivers that can compete at that level. It just just goes to show how close it can really be. And the machinery they're using, the teams that they're involved in, like everything is top notch to be able to come up with a performance like that.
Yeah, you're a rally fan, John Joe?
Well,
You're kind of laid back. You're too laid back.
Maybe in the bar looking up at the screen. Maybe. There's a friend of mine, a work colleague of mine, comes up from Galway this last couple of years, and we would have kind of met up. But no, I have to say it's my first time to meet Rory here, and it's nice to be in his company. But just to hear him talking about the rally, everybody has their own passion, and when you see Rory or hear Rory talking about it, it's obvious to see that he's top man in the sport as well.
Would you see a victory now, Rory, is sort of putting a nice top to the career? Because as I said, I mean, you had the fantastic years with Bertie, one in here and one in there, and Tarmac Championships and all that sort of stuff. And your own rally, I know how important this one is to you. Would this put the icing on the cake for you?
Oh, certainly would. And obviously guys from Fermanagh as well, Fisher country as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've been rallying together, as you know, for a good while, and we've had a lot of success as well, both Gary and I. But this year, the one Donegal would be ultimate. Like at this point in my career, like it's probably my last chance anyway.
So we've been hearing that for a few years.
but anyway, I think on a separate note on the rally, it was confirmed as well that Michael Dunlop's going to compete in the rally this year.
Yeah.
And of course, Michael Dunlop, for anybody that doesn't know, was the winner of the senior TT race in Isle of Man 2 weeks ago, and also the winner of the Northwest 200 there 4 weeks ago. And this
so is he any good in four wheels?
Well, he's never driven before, he's never rallied before, but there's a deal put in place now that he's coming to compete here. And this is, this sort of thing is unbelievable. It's like maybe getting someone like John Joe from the Shepherd Sport and coming and putting him in there and saying, off you go. He was a top man at the football now.
It's hard to believe that he hasn't taken part in some form.
No, but he's coming. He's confirmed the entry, and that Michael Dunlop is an iconic figure in the world of
Joey's
motorcycling.
Son, yeah.
No, Robert Dunlop's
son. Joey's nephew.
Yeah, and he's coming here to do this, and the attention that will get from the huge crowds or huge masses of motorcycle racing following is unbelievable.
And from the media, Chris.
Absolutely, because people like that bring their own sort of following as well, and people are always kind of wondering how's this guy doing, and all over the weekend people are going to be looking at his
the thing about this, Charlie, if he doesn't do well, he'll still be criticised.
You wouldn't do that. Listen, we're running out of time. Just a couple of wee things to mention. We better mention Mark English here, because he was out in New York at the weekend and ran a fantastic 800 metres, Chris. I mean, behind the Olympic champion and ahead of the guy who finished was a third or fourth in the Olympics as well,
I think what Mark English did at the weekend, he probably can't quantify it into a few sentences. Like, for Irish athletes even to compete in Diamond League is rare these days, but for Mark English to go and set a season's best behind David Rhodesia, who was one of the sensations of the London Olympics, and he was just 5 metres away from him at going to cross the line. And guys who he beat, Dwayne Solomon was fourth in that Olympic Games. Marcin Lewandowski was gold medalist at the last European Championships, and the other Polish guy, Krajskot. These are guys now Mark's going to be looking to in Zurich in August when he competes in the European Seniors. And you've got to say, the way his season has started, that Mark English is a real medal hope for Zurich. And that's not putting pressure on the guy, because his times, his races have suggested that. And fantastic young athlete, one of the best about at the minute.
It's great to see that, Charlie, because in a wee bit of separate note, we're Joe English, who's Mark's father, like, we were brought up together and we're youngsters, played football and everything together. But the Englishes were always brilliant athletes, even when we were youngsters, like and Joe and the rest of his family and all. And it just goes to show the way the sort of the culture is put into him as well, and he's come on and he's at this level now. And for Letterkenny and Donegal and Ireland as a whole, it's brilliant to have somebody
fantastic,
at this level.
John Joe. Isn't it great to see somebody from Donegal, John Joe? And the thing about Mark English, and you'll appreciate it, he's so focused on what he's doing. And I mean, he has said, Chris, from way back, and John Joe, the European Championships were the thing, the Olympics and all this sort of stuff. But he said, no, the European Championships in Zurich are what I'm looking at.
Exactly. Well, I just seen the clip on the news, and just the determination he showed just 50 yards out from the line is unbelievable. And there's a great tradition and a great culture of athletics in the county here, and I think from my own sport point of view, it's not happening to near enough, because I always felt that from a tuned in point of view, that the athletes were always the top of the pile,
Yeah,
when
for
they
sure.
went out to compete.
Yeah, we wish him well. Right, final word. Martin Keimer won the US Open by 8 shots. John Joe has his golfing T-shirt on him here,
Especially for you, Charlie.
especially for the podcast here. And I mean, the significance of this is his second major, but he was 8 shots ahead of everybody else, John Joe, on a course that was set up to be difficult. There was only 2 other people actually under par, Ricky Fowler and a guy called Eric Compton, who's had 2 heart transplants, one when he was 12, one when he was 28. But Keimer is a superstar in the making, and he's a guy who lost his game for a couple of years because he went to change his swing and it didn't work. But for him to win by 8 shots at the US Open, fantastic performance.
I'll take your word for it, Charlie.
Fantastic. I can tell you, I watched the most of it. I mean, he shot 2 rounds of 65. He was 10 under. I think he was 6 ahead after 2 rounds, and the least he was ahead then was 4, I think, after that. Fantastic.
And the one by 8 shots, what was last year? What was the one in margin, before him that?
Well, Justin Rose only won by a shot last year or 2, wasn't it? Now, Rory McIlroy won by 8, was it, or more, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. McDowell won by a shot 2 years ago, But I mean, the course was Pinehurst 2 was set up so difficult, and for him to score,
The rare thing about it was he was so comprehensive, kind of from early on. You could see that this was Keimer's.
He was in a different league.
It's funny how them boys come and go in golf like that, isn't it? Where you always have, these new winners come, they lose their game for a while and then they come back again.
Try to change things.
It's been very unpredictable, really, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, we've run out of time. Listen, thanks for coming in. We'll look forward to all these predictions. I've taken a note of them, who's going to win and all that sort of stuff. So we'll be back later on in the summer. The rally gets underway on Friday.
Who's going to win that?
Who's going to win that? Well, I'm saying that Gary Jennings and Rory Kennedy are going to win it, but of course you're not going to agree with me. You've been doing your best to talk everybody else up. Chris, we'll call who's going to win it.
I think after what happened last year and stuff, I'm going to go with Gary Jennings and Rory Kennedy as well.
The pressure's on you, Rory.
No bother, we can deal with
for a 4th
Charlie,
title, as they say. All right, Rory Kennedy, John Joe Doherty, Chris McNulty, thanks for coming in. That's it from Talking Sport. We'll be back with more later this month, hopefully before the Ulster final, with Donegal in it. Hi, I'm Charlie Collins, and we're Talking Sport.